My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and 1 month was all it took for someone to prove they were never looking for love. They were looking for someone willing to mistake manipulation for commitment. Looking back now, I should have noticed the warning signs sooner. But that's the tricky thing about people who wear masks. They don't arrive looking dangerous. They arrive looking exactly like everything you've been hoping to find. I matched with Ethan Parker on a dating app about 6 weeks before everything fell apart. His profile wasn't flashy. No rented sports cars, no fake motivational quotes, just pictures hiking with friends, laughing at baseball games, and holding an oversized golden retriever that somehow made him look even more approachable. He was handsome in an effortless way, funny without trying too hard. The kind of man who actually asked questions and listened to the answers instead of waiting for his turn to speak. After nearly a year of disappointing dates filled with ghosting, mixed signals, and conversations that died after appetizers, Ethan felt refreshingly normal. Our first date lasted nearly 5 hours. We started with coffee. That turned into dinner. Dinner somehow became a walk through downtown, while arguing over which true crime podcast had the worst ending. He laughed at my terrible jokes. I laughed at his even worse ones. When he walked me to my car, he didn't try to rush a kiss. He simply smiled. I had a really good time. So did I. I'd like to see you again. I'd like that too. Simple. Yes. No games. At least that's what I believed. Over the next month, we saw each other constantly. Movie nights, farmers markets, lazy Sunday breakfasts. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing. My favorite coffee order, the fact that I hated cilantro, that my older sister always teased me for crying during animated movies. It felt effortless. For the first time in a long while, I let myself imagine where things could go. Not marriage, not forever, just possibility. Still, there were tiny moments that didn't quite fit. Moments I dismissed because everything else felt so good. Whenever conversations drifted toward relationships, Ethan became strangely intense. One evening, while watching a couple celebrate an anniversary at a nearby table, I smiled. I hope they're happy. He stared at them longer than I expected. I just don't understand why people waste years figuring things out. What do you mean? If you know, you know. I laughed. I think people usually need time. Time is how people get hurt. His answer felt rehearsed, almost defensive. I brushed it aside. Maybe he'd had a difficult breakup. Everyone carries baggage. Another night, we passed a jewelry store while walking downtown. I joked dangerous place to window shop. Instead of laughing, he looked through the glass. If someone really loves you, they shouldn't need years to prove it. I tilted my head. Love isn't measured by jewelry. He smiled. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. It wasn't an argument. Just odd. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened exactly 31 days after we officially started dating. I remember the date because my calendar had reminded me that morning. 1 month together. We celebrated at a small Italian restaurant I loved. Nothing expensive, just homemade pasta and decent wine. The entire evening felt off. Ethan barely touched his food. He kept checking his phone. Every few minutes he'd glance at me like he was rehearsing something in his head. I assumed work was stressing him out, so I finally asked, "Everything okay?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah." Silence. Then, another few minutes passed. Finally, he placed his fork down carefully. "Nathalie." His voice suddenly became serious. "I think it's time we had an important conversation about our future." I smiled. "Already? I need to know whether you're serious about us. I laughed softly. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." He slowly shook his head. "No, really serious." I frowned. "I'm not following." He reached into his pocket. For one ridiculous second, I actually wondered if he was pulling out concert tickets. Instead, he unlocked his phone. He turned the screen toward me. Displayed on it was a screenshot. A luxury jewelry website. A designer engagement collection. Except it wasn't displaying a woman's ring. It was displaying a custom platinum men's engagement band paired with a luxury watch package. The total sat boldly beneath the picture. 18美元. Ling, ling, ling. I blinked, then laughed. Very funny. He didn't smile. I want you to buy this for me. I waited. Surely the punchline was coming. It never did. I'm serious. The laughter disappeared from my face. What? I want you to buy it before the end of this month. I stared at him. Ethan, we've been together long enough. Long enough? He nodded confidently. I'm 30. I've wasted enough time with women who weren't serious. My ex kept saying she loved me, but when commitment came up, she always found excuses. He leaned closer. I'm not making that mistake again. I honestly wondered if I had somehow walked into another conversation entirely. We've been dating for 1 month, 31 days. So, you're asking me to spend $18,000. I'm asking you to prove I'm important. I looked back at the screen. Designer brand. Custom engraving. Premium watch. Everything carefully selected. He'd clearly planned this. My best friend's girlfriend bought him a promise watch after 2 weeks. He continued calmly. Because she knew he was the one. If you feel the same about me, this shouldn't be difficult. I felt my stomach tighten. The waiter arrived to refill our drinks. Neither of us spoke until he walked away. I finally broke the silence. So let me make sure I understand. You want me to spend nearly $20,000 after 1 month of dating? Correct. And if I don't? He folded his hands together. Then, I know you're wasting my time. I'll leave. There it was. The ultimatum. Delivered without emotion. Without hesitation. As if he were discussing the weather. I looked around the restaurant. Families laughing. Couples sharing dessert. Someone celebrating a birthday nearby. Everything felt strangely normal. Only my table had suddenly become completely surreal. I picked up my glass of water. Took one slow sip. Set it back down. Then I met his eyes. So, you've given me 2 choices. Yes. I nodded once. Quietly. I choose option 2. His expression froze. What? I choose the option where you leave. His face completely lost color. No. You misunderstood. I don't think I did. You can't actually mean that. I do. I raised my hand toward the waiter. Could we get the check, please? The waiter smiled politely. Of course. And I glanced at Ethan one last time. Could you split it? Ethan stared at me, as though I'd spoken another language. You're seriously walking away. I'm accepting the decision you offered. But I thought you'd fight for me. I couldn't help shaking my head. No. You thought I'd panic. You thought I'd negotiate. You thought I'd spend $18,000 because I was afraid of losing someone I'd known for 31 days. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Finally, he whispered, I was testing you. I almost laughed. Testing me. My therapist says I have abandonment issues. Sometimes I push people away to see who stays. The explanation might have earned sympathy. If it hadn't come attached to a luxury shopping list, I signed my half of the receipt, then stood. I'm genuinely sorry for whatever happened before we met, but your healing isn't supposed to become my financial audition. I picked up my purse. I hope therapy helps. I really do. But it won't be with me. As I walked toward the door, I heard him call my name once. Then again. I didn't turn around. Outside, the evening air felt strangely lighter. Part of me felt disappointed. I'd genuinely liked him. Another part of me felt something much stronger. Relief. Like I'd stepped off a train moments before it derailed. I drove home in silence. Poured myself a glass of wine. Sat on my couch, replaying every conversation we'd ever had. Searching for clues I'd missed. At exactly 1:04 p.m., my phone buzzed. Ethan. I'm sorry. I panicked. Please don't throw this away. 30 seconds later. You're the best woman I've ever met. Then another message. Please call me. I stared at the screen. Something told me. This wasn't over. The messages continued through the night. At first, they sounded remorseful. Ethan apologized for putting me on the spot. He said he'd panicked because things between us felt too good, and he was terrified of being abandoned again. He promised the ring had never really mattered. Then, around midnight, the tone changed. You know what? Forget it. You clearly never cared about me. I can't believe I wasted a month on someone so emotionally cold. 10 minutes later, another message appeared. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Please just answer. By morning, there were 23 texts waiting for me. Some begged. Some blamed. Some tried to make me jealous. You're going to regret this when someone else gives me everything you refuse to. Do you know how many women would kill to be with a man like me? Then came the insults. You're probably incapable of love. You'll end up alone because you're too selfish to compromise. I didn't answer any of them. Every message made the decision easier. For 3 days, Ethan swung between rage and desperation so quickly that it was almost dizzying. 1 hour, I was the love of his life. The next, I was a heartless woman who had manipulated him. By Thursday afternoon, I blocked his number. I thought that would finally end it. That evening, I was curled up on my couch watching a basketball game when my doorbell rang. It was a little after 8. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the camera beside the door. A middle-aged woman stood on my porch, dressed in a beige coat arms, folded tightly across her chest. I recognized her immediately. Ethan's mother, Linda Parker. I'd met her once briefly when I picked Ethan up for dinner. She'd smiled, complimented my car, and asked what I did for a living before she'd even asked how my day was. Now she looked furious. I considered pretending I wasn't home. Then curiosity won. I opened the door but kept one hand on the frame. Mrs. Parker, we need to talk about what you did to my son. No, hello. No hesitation. What exactly did I do? You humiliated him. Her voice was sharp enough to cut through the closed door behind me. You abandoned him in a restaurant. He hasn't slept properly in days. He can barely eat. I almost admired how quickly the story had been rewritten. Your son demanded that I spend $18,000 on an engagement gift after 31 days of dating. Her expression didn't change. That was a test. So I've heard. He needed to know whether you were serious. Most people ask that with a conversation. You don't understand what he's been through. She stepped closer. His ex-girlfriend wasted 2 years of his life. She kept promising him a future, then left when he asked for real commitment. I felt a flicker of sympathy. Not enough to excuse anything. I'm sorry that happened to him. Then why punish him for needing reassurance? Reassurance is asking where I see the relationship going. Reassurance is not sending me a product page and attaching a deadline. Linda's lips tightened. You women say you want emotionally available men, but the second a man knows what he wants, you run. I didn't run because he knew what he wanted. I kept my voice calm. I walked away because he tried to manipulate me into proving my feelings with money. He wasn't manipulating you. He said buy it or lose him. He was protecting himself. By turning the relationship into a hostage negotiation, her face hardened. A good woman would have fought for him. A healthy man wouldn't have demanded a fight after 1 month. For 1 second, she looked almost shocked that I wasn't backing down. Then she pointed a finger toward me. My son deserves someone who understands his value. I agree. That caught her off guard. I hope he finds someone compatible with him. But it isn't me. You're going to regret this. Maybe. I nodded toward the street. But that will be my regret to manage. She stared at me for several long seconds. Then she turned and marched back to her car. I locked the door behind her. My team had fallen behind by 14 points while we argued. Still, it was less exhausting than the conversation on my porch. The next afternoon, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Hello, is this Natalie? Yes. This is Rachel Parker, Ethan's older sister. I sat up straighter. What does your family want now? She exhaled. I don't want anything. I actually called to apologize. That wasn't what I expected. Rachel's voice sounded tired rather than angry. What Ethan did was insane. I told him not to give you that ultimatum. You knew? He called me before dinner. He wanted to know whether the watch and ring package looked expensive enough. I closed my eyes. So it wasn't some impulsive panic. No. He planned it. The confirmation hurt more than I expected. Until that moment, Some part of me had still wanted to believe Ethan had made one terrible emotional mistake. Rachel continued. Our mother encouraged him. She told him that if you were afraid to lose him, you'd buy it. That explains why she showed up at my house. Rachel groaned. She did what? She came here last night and accused me of humiliating him. I'm so sorry. Rachel went quiet before adding Mom did something similar to our father. 2 months after they started dating, she demanded an engagement ring or threatened to leave. Dad gave in. And how did that work out? They've been miserable together for 30 years. Her answer came without hesitation. Mom still tells the story like it was romantic. She thinks forcing someone to choose proves how much they love you. I leaned back against the couch. Suddenly, Ethan's behavior didn't seem random. It felt inherited. I'm not calling to convince you to take him back, Rachel said. Please don't. I'm calling because he's telling people a completely different story. My stomach tightened. What story? That you two were practically engaged. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. We never discussed marriage. I know. But he's saying you promised him a future, made him believe you were ready to settle down, and then disappeared when he asked for commitment. That isn't even close to what happened. I know. Rachel sounded embarrassed. He's already contacted the friend who introduced you. My chest went cold. Ethan and I had met through a dating app, but we discovered early on that my friend, Marcus, knew him socially and had vouched for him after our first date. I thanked Rachel and ended the call. Then I immediately called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Natalie, I was literally about to call you. Let me guess. Ethan told you I panicked over commitment. There was a pause. He said you two had been discussing marriage. We dated for 31 days. I know that now. He demanded an $18,000 engagement package and told me to buy it or he'd leave. Marcus went silent. Then, he said, he left that part out. He also left out his mother showing up at my apartment. His mother came to your apartment last night. Okay. That's completely unhinged. I told him everything. The restaurant. The ultimatum. The texts. Rachel's warning. Marcus apologized repeatedly. I swear he seemed normal. He did to me too. I'll correct it if anyone asks. That helped, but not much. The uncomfortable truth was that Ethan had already started building a version of events where he was the wounded man and I was the woman who had promised him everything, then vanished. That night, another unknown number texted me. I know Rachel called you. A second message followed. She hates me. She's always been jealous and tries to ruin my relationships. Then another. Whatever she told you isn't true. I stared at the screen without responding. His final message arrived several minutes later. You're going to regret throwing me away when I'm married to someone amazing and you're still alone. I took screenshots of everything. The restaurant demand. The apologies. The insults. The new numbers. The threat disguised as a prediction. I saved them in a folder and backed them up. At the time, I told myself I was being overly cautious, but something deep in my stomach told me Ethan wasn't finished rewriting the story, and sooner or later, I was going to need proof of what had actually happened. The folder of screenshots grew faster than I wanted it to. For several days, nothing happened. No new numbers, no surprise visits, no messages from his family. I started to believe Ethan had finally accepted that the relationship was over. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, while I was sitting at my desk, reviewing a client report, a notification appeared on my computer. Ethan Parker sent you a message on LinkedIn. For a second, I thought I had misread it. LinkedIn, the professional networking platform, where people posted job promotions, industry articles, and carefully rehearsed congratulations. Apparently, it was also where rejected boyfriends threatened lawsuits. His message read, Natalie, I think we need to resolve this situation like professionals. You've been spreading false information about me and damaging my reputation. Several people have contacted me about the engagement incident. This is defamation. If you continue, I may have no choice but to pursue legal action. Contact me before this escalates. I read it 3 times. The audacity was almost impressive. He had told people we were practically engaged. He had accused me of abandoning him. His mother had appeared at my home. And now, I was somehow the one damaging his reputation by calmly telling the truth. I forwarded the message to my friend, Daniel Reed, an attorney I'd known since college. His reply arrived less than 5 minutes later. Truth is a defense to defamation. He'd also need to prove actual damages. This reads like intimidation, not a legal claim. A second message followed. Also, threatening legal action through LinkedIn is deeply embarrassing. I smiled, despite myself. I didn't answer Ethan. I saved the message with the rest of the screenshots. Wednesday morning, I stopped at my usual coffee shop before work. The place was tucked between a dry cleaner and a small bookstore. I had been going there for years. The barista knew my order before I reached the counter. Ethan knew that too. I saw him before I reached the door. He was standing beside the outdoor tables with both hands shoved into the pockets of his coat. My first instinct was to turn around. Then, he stepped directly into my path. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Natalie, please." His voice sounded softer than it had in the messages, almost reasonable. That made me trust him even less. "You threatened legal action yesterday." I was angry. "You accused me of defamation." "Because people are talking about me." "They're talking because you lied." His jaw tightened. "I didn't lie. You told people we were discussing marriage. We were heading in that direction. We had been dating for 1 month. That doesn't mean it wasn't serious." I stepped around him. He moved with me. "I've changed," he said quickly. "I've been thinking about everything. I realize I handled it badly." "That's good." I was scared. "Then, work through that with your therapist." "I am." He took a breath. "My therapist says I was operating from a place of abandonment trauma. I pushed you because I needed reassurance." "You didn't ask for reassurance. You demanded $18,000. It wasn't about the money." "Then, why did you choose the most expensive package on the website?" He looked away. "That told me everything." "I came on too strong," he admitted. "But I made one mistake." "One mistake?" "Yes." I stared at him. "Your mother came to my house." "I didn't ask her to do that." "You contacted mutual friends and lied about what happened." "I told them how I felt." "You texted me from multiple numbers after I blocked you." "I was trying to get closure." "You threatened to sue me." "I said I might." His voice rose slightly. "Why are you treating me like I'm dangerous?" "Because you refuse to accept the word no." That stopped him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. People moved around us carrying coffee cups and briefcases, pretending not to listen. Ethan's expression softened again. "I miss you." I felt nothing. Not anger. Not longing. Just exhaustion. "I don't miss this." His eyes filled with tears. "You're being so cold." I was finished at the restaurant. After everything we shared 31 days. His face twisted as though I'd slapped him. "You act like it meant nothing." "It meant something to me before you turned it into a test. I gave you everything." "No, Ethan. You gave me attention for 1 month and then demanded proof that I was worthy of continuing." His eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what it's like for a man to invest in women who waste his time." "I understand disappointment." I kept my voice low. "But pain doesn't give you permission to control the next person. My biological clock isn't unlimited either." I blinked. He continued quickly. "I want a family. I want stability. Women get years to decide what they want, and men are expected to wait around until they're chosen. That isn't what happened here. You had the chance to show me you were different. By buying you jewelry. By fighting for me." There it was again. That phrase, "fight for me." As if love had to be proven through panic. As if refusing manipulation meant I lacked passion. "I shouldn't have to fight someone to be with them," I said. "A relationship isn't supposed to begin with one person creating a crisis and then grading the other's reaction." His sadness disappeared almost instantly. His mouth hardened. "You're going to end up alone." "Maybe. You think you're too good for everyone." "I think I'm allowed to choose who I date." "You'll come back when you realize what you lost." "I won't." The certainty in my voice seemed to offend him more than anything else. He wiped his face aggressively. "Fine." He stepped away. But don't contact me when I'm happy with someone else. I haven't contacted you once since the restaurant." His cheeks reddened. Then he turned and walked down the sidewalk without looking back. I entered the coffee shop. The barista glanced toward the window. "Everything okay?" "Bad morning." She handed me my usual order. Extra espresso. On the house. I thanked her and went to work. 2 nights later, another unknown number sent me a screenshot. It was a group chat. Ethan. Linda. Several of Ethan's friends. Linda had written, "No normal woman walks away from a man like you. She's either broke jealous or emotionally damaged." One friend replied, "Maybe she couldn't afford the gift and got embarrassed." Another wrote, "A woman who really loves a man would at least negotiate." Then Ethan, "She makes good money. She's just cheap. She has commitment issues and probably never learned how to love properly." My stomach turned. Linda responded, "You dodged a bullet. A strong man scares insecure women." Someone else added, "King behavior. You set a standard and she couldn't meet it." Ethan's final message was the most revealing. "I really thought she was the one. I gave her everything, and she threw me away because I asked for the bare minimum." Beneath the screenshot was a message. "Thought you should see how deep this goes. Rachel." I texted her back, "Why are you still helping me?" Her response came almost immediately, "Because this happened before." I sat down on the edge of my bed. What happened? My brother did the same thing to his last girlfriend, Megan. Different demand, same strategy. Rachel explained that after nearly 2 years together, Ethan had insisted Megan move money into a joint account to prove she trusted him. When Megan refused, he accused her of planning to leave. Linda contacted Megan's parents. She appeared at Megan's workplace, crying. She told mutual friends Megan had used Ethan and never intended to commit. "What happened to Megan?" I asked. "She moved to another state 6 months later." Rachel continued, "She couldn't deal with the gossip. Mom even showed up at her office lobby once. Security had to remove her." I stared at the screen. I had believed I was dealing with a terrible breakup, but this wasn't a breakup. It was a pattern. Ethan created impossible tests. When someone failed to surrender, he rewrote himself as the victim. Linda reinforced the story. Everyone around them was expected to applaud. Rachel saw one final message. "You didn't break his heart, Natalie. You interrupted the script." I read that sentence again. Then I opened the folder of screenshots. The apologies, the insults, the threats, the lies. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt afraid of how close I had come to becoming another woman who uprooted her entire life just to escape him. I had not dodged one bad decision. I had stepped out of a cycle that had already swallowed someone before me. And something told me Ethan was about to discover that this time the truth had followed him into the room. For the next few weeks, I disappeared from Ethan's orbit as completely as I could. I blocked every number he used. There had been 4 more attempts after the coffee shop confrontation. One message said he forgave me. Another said he hoped I learned to treat the next man better. The last came from an unfamiliar number and contained only 3 words. "You'll understand eventually." I blocked that one too. I made my social media accounts private. I asked Marcus and the few mutual acquaintances we shared not to send me updates unless Ethan did something that directly affected my safety or my job. Then, I returned to my life. Work, dinner with friends, weekend visits with my older sister, quiet mornings where my phone stayed silent. At first, the silence made me anxious. Every knock at the door made my shoulders tighten. Every unknown number sent a cold wave through my stomach. But little by little, my nervous system began to understand that the emergency was over. I didn't have to defend myself every day. I didn't have to predict Ethan's next accusation. I didn't have to convince anyone of the truth. The screenshots existed. The people who mattered believed me. That should have been the end. But consequences sometimes arrive long after the person who caused them stops paying attention. About 5 weeks after the restaurant, Marcus texted me late on a Saturday night. "You are not going to believe what happened." I almost ignored it. Then another message appeared. "Actually, you probably will." He called before I could respond. Apparently, he'd attended a birthday party for a mutual friend named Sophie Bennett. Ethan was there. Marcus said Ethan had spent most of the evening repeating his familiar version of our relationship to anyone willing to listen. We had been practically engaged. I had promised him a future. He had opened his heart. Then I abandoned him when he asked whether I was serious. He even said you discussed children, Marcus told me. I stared at the wall. We never discussed children. I know. Marcus sounded both amused and irritated. He was performing. Full wounded man's speech. People were comforting him. Then the performance went wrong. One of my co-workers, Kevin Lawson, happened to be at the party. I hadn't known Kevin and Sophie were friends. Kevin had overheard parts of the story weeks earlier when I vented during lunch after receiving Ethan's LinkedIn threat. According to Marcus, Ethan was standing near the kitchen telling a group of people that I had disappeared because I couldn't handle a mature man who wanted commitment. Kevin interrupted him. Wait, he said. Didn't you two date for about a month? Ethan's expression changed. Marcus imitated the silence that followed. Then Kevin continued. And didn't you demand she buy you an $18,000 engagement package, or you'd leave? The conversation stopped. People turned toward Ethan. He laughed nervously. That's not what happened. Kevin shook his head. She showed me the messages. Technically, I had only shown Kevin the LinkedIn threat and one screenshot during a conversation, but Ethan didn't know that. Kevin continued. You gave her a deadline. You said, buy it or lose me. Ethan's face reportedly turned bright red. He's twisting it, Ethan said. Kevin looked around the room. Ethan corrected himself quickly. Natalie. She's twisting it. Sophie, the birthday girl, stared at him. Did you ask her to spend $18,000 after 1 month? It wasn't about the money. A few people exchanged looks. It was a test, Ethan explained. I needed to know whether she was committed. After 1 month, Sophie asked, if she knew I was the one, the timing shouldn't matter. Someone near the counter laughed, not cruelly. Just the involuntary laugh people make when something is too absurd to process politely. Ethan's shoulders stiffened. He tried to keep explaining. He said women always demanded commitment from men, so it was unfair to criticize him for expecting the same. He said the package was symbolic. He said I could afford it. That sentence ended whatever sympathy remained in the room. Marcus told me. Sophie crossed her arms. You thought she should spend that much because she could. Ethan's answer was apparently some version of, if she loved me, she would have wanted to. The room went silent again. Then Sophie said quietly, that's not commitment. Ethan left less than 10 minutes later. His story, carefully repeated, for weeks had collapsed in one conversation. I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. Maybe there was a small amount of satisfaction. Not because he had been humiliated, because the truth no longer depended on me, constantly defending it. A week later, Rachel contacted me one final time. Her message began, you didn't hear this from me. Then she called. Ethan had lost his job. What happened? I asked. Rachel sighed. Same strategy. Different victim. His manager had given him routine feedback on a client project. Nothing dramatic. A few errors. Missed details. A recommendation that he slow down and double-check his work before submitting final reports. Ethan took the criticism as an insult. He told his manager that after 8 months with the company, he deserved a promotion and a raise. He gave them 2 weeks. If they didn't recognize his value, he said he would quit. I already knew the ending. They chose option 2, I said. Rachel gave a humorless laugh. Immediately. Human Resources accepted his resignation on the spot. Ethan apparently believed they were bluffing. He arrived the following Monday, expecting management to call him into a meeting, apologize, and offer him more money. Instead, his belongings had already been packed into a box. Security escorted him out. For several seconds, neither Rachel nor I spoke. Then I said, "That's actually sad." "It is." Rachel's voice softened. "But he won't learn from it." Linda says his boss was intimidated by him. She says powerful people always punish men who know their worth. Same script. Every time. Rachel told me she was moving across the country the following month. She had accepted a job in Portland and had already signed a lease. "I love my family," she said, but I can't keep living inside their version of reality. I hope you find some peace. That's the plan." Before hanging up, she added, "Ethan still thinks you'll come back." I closed my eyes. Why? Mom tells him you just need time to realize what you lost. He'll be waiting a long time. I told him that. Rachel laughed softly. He said, "I don't understand true love." "What did you say?" "That true love doesn't come with a price tag and a deadline." That was the last conversation we had. A few weeks later, I heard through Marcus that Ethan had moved back in with his parents. His dating profile now described him as a man seeking a woman who treats her partner like a priority, not an option. The irony was so obvious it didn't need commentary. Linda sent me a friend request on social media. I blocked her. Whatever closure she wanted, she wasn't going to get it from me. By then, I had started seeing someone new. His name was Noah Grant. We met through friends, not an app. On our fourth date, we sat in a coffee shop across town from my old regular place. I had changed locations partly because I liked the coffee, and partly because I never wanted another surprise confrontation beside a sidewalk table. Noah asked why I'd taken a break from dating. "Bad experience," I said. "How bad?" I gave him the shortened version. The expensive commitment package. The ultimatum. The mother on my porch. The fake story. The LinkedIn threat. His eyebrows rose higher with every detail. He demanded $18,000 after 31 days. Yes, and his mother defended it. She called it a test. Noah stirred his coffee slowly. Then, he looked at me. "You walked away immediately." I chose the second option. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Good." I waited for him to say most women would have negotiated. Instead, he said, "Anyone who creates a crisis to test your loyalty isn't asking for love. They're asking for control." The sentence settled somewhere deep inside me. Not because it was new, because it was simple, healthy, uncomplicated. Noah didn't praise me for being strong. He didn't make Ethan sound mysterious or wounded. He didn't ask whether I might have misunderstood. He recognized the behavior for what it was. That moment taught me more about compatibility than any grand romantic gesture could have. Real relationships weren't built by forcing someone to prove themselves under pressure. They were built quietly, through consistency, through respect, through the freedom to say no without punishment. Sometimes I imagined what would have happened if I had stayed at that restaurant and negotiated. Maybe I would have offered a cheaper gift. Maybe Ethan would have accepted temporarily. Then another test would have appeared. A shared bank account. A rushed wedding. A demand that I cut off anyone who questioned him. I would have spent the relationship trying to avoid becoming the villain in a story he had already written. Instead, I walked away. I kept my dignity. I kept my $18,000. More importantly, I kept the part of myself that understood love should feel safe enough to grow slowly. Ethan gave me two options because he believed both would lead to him winning. He never imagined I would take his threat seriously. That was his mistake. When someone tells you to surrender or leave, sometimes the healthiest answer is to open the door yourself.